She woke up bound on the freezing dirt floor, lips split and cracked, wrists burning raw. The air was thick with the smell of hay, sweat, and fear. Eliza Crow did not scream. A scream had betrayed her once before, and that barn had learned her silence first. What the ranch owner, Wade Holloway, had done to her in that barn was worse than anyone could imagine. And the worst part was this: the man who did it slept soundly, then walked away as if the mess he left behind would clean itself up. Not because of the blood on the floor, but because someone had decided she could be erased quietly. She lay on her side where light slipped through broken planks, dust floating as if it were watching. Her ankles were tied, her hands were numb, her mouth tasted of metal and stale water. Every breath felt borrowed. The barn was not loud, it did not echo violence, it was worse than that. It was calm, patient, and waiting. Eliza tried to remember how long she'd been there, maybe hours, maybe days. Time splintered when fear stayed too long. Her last clear memory was the sound of boots on wood, not rushed, not angry, just certain. Someone had decided her worth, then left her there like a chore, finished and forgotten. The desert did what it always did. It watched and said nothing. Miles from town, a man named Elias Mercer rode beneath a sky so dry and brutal it looked scorched. He'd bought the land for next to nothing. 30 quiet acres, a leaning house that seemed to have given up, a barn that stood crooked but hadn't fallen yet. Elias hadn't come for hope. He'd come for silence. War had taught him how loud silence could be, but he thought he could bear it. He'd buried his wife with the money from the last of his cattle. No crowd, no eulogy, just dirt over a box and the sound of his own breathing. When he swung down from the horse, the wind cut across the yard like a warning. His boots ground against gravel. The horse snorted, uneasy, shifting its weight. That was when Elias felt something was wrong. Animals always knew before people did. He moved toward the barn with his hand near his knife, not out of fear, but habit. The door creaked open like something inside was exhaling. Darkness stretched, dust drifted slow. The smell hit first. Sweat, old rope, fear with nowhere to go. Then he saw a shape in the far corner, not hidden, not arranged, just left there, like trash. At first he thought it was rags. Then he saw a bare foot. Even then, Elias didn't rush. Every step sounded louder than it should have. The barn was listening. He knelt and touched her shoulder. Her skin was cold, like she'd been left out all night. Then she flinched, just barely, as if life were hanging by a thread. Elias's blade flashed once in the dim light. He cut the ropes quickly because he knew what rope did to flesh. He pulled a blanket aside. Her wrists were rubbed raw, skin scraped down too far. Eliza Crow lay there bruised, sunburned, dirt speared across her face, lips split and bleeding, her eyes fluttering open for half a second, green, clear as glass, terrified. She tried to speak. No sound came out. Elias poured water from his canteen onto a scrap of cloth and laid it on her forehead. Her breathing hitched. "You're safe now," he said. He didn't know if that was true. She passed out. Elias stayed there a long time, listening to her breathing, slow and uneven, like it might stop if he looked away. The barn was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet, the kind that demanded an answer. He carried her outside and laid her on a cot beneath the open sky. He wrapped her in the only clean blanket he had. He sat beside her with his shotgun across his knees, not out of fear, but because he understood one simple thing. Whoever had done this wasn't finished. That night, Eliza dreamed of Boots again. She jerked awake in her sleep. Elias did not touch her. He only kept the lamp lit. Morning came slowly. Eliza woke to the smell of bitter coffee and the sound of wind moving through dry grass. Her body screamed when she tried to sit up. Elias handed her the cup with both hands. She took it the same way. They did not speak. They did not need to. Her eyes told the story. Her mouth could not. The hollow look of someone who had seen firsthand how easily a human life could be pushed aside. At last, she whispered her name. Eliza. Elias nodded once. She did not say who had done it. Not yet. That afternoon, Elias found signs near the creek. Eliza didn't say it out loud, but she no longer looked toward the barn. Even in daylight, she listened for the creak of boards, as if the sound itself might drag her back. 2 sets of boot prints, fresh cigarette butts that weren't his. Elias checked the rifle, loaded extra rounds, and hung a bell on the gate. Eliza sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. She was learning something important. She had not been left there by accident. That barn had been chosen. What the ranch owner did to her in that barn was worse than anyone could imagine, because it had been meant to end in silence. As the sun dropped behind the hills, Elias stood, looking out over the land he had once thought would save him. Eliza sat behind him, her eyes fixed on the barn door, no longer empty now. Somewhere out there, the man who did this believed it was over. He believed no one would ask questions. He believed Eliza Crow would vanish into dust and quiet. Elias Mercer knew better. And as the desert cooled, as the bell on the gate waited without a sound, a question hung heavier than the night air. When the man who left her there came back to make sure she would stay silent forever, who would break first in this place? Him or them? Morning came to the ranch as if it too were hesitating. Eliza Crow woke to the wind sliding through drier grass and the soft creak of settling wood. Her body felt like it had been borrowed by someone else. Every movement reminded her she was still alive, and that she didn't yet know why. She tried to sit up. Pain answered before Elias Mercer could speak. He was already there. He sat on a crate near the porch, a chipped coffee cup steaming in his hand. "Don't try," he said. Not gentle, not cold. Just true, Eliza nodded. Talking was too much right now. She wrapped both hands around the cup when he passed it to her. It was strong, bitter, and tasted like something made to keep a person standing. Her shoulders lowered just a little. She was still weak, but hot coffee and clean air could pull a person back when they'd been left to die. That was the first thing Elias noticed. Not the bruises, not the way she avoided looking at the barn, but that small drop of her shoulders, as if her body was finally willing to believe it had a place to rest. They didn't talk much that morning, and that was enough. There was a kind of silence only broken people understood. It didn't demand questions. It didn't push for answers. Eliza watched Elias move around the yard, fixing a loose board, checking the fence, feeding the horse. He didn't hover over her. He didn't stare. He treated her like a person, not a problem. By noon, she asked if she could stand. Elias looked at her once, then nodded. She took 3 careful steps, then 4. Her legs shook, but they held. "That's enough," he said, and she listened. That afternoon, Elias walked the land again, slower this time, more careful. The signs near the creek still didn't sit right with him. "I won't be tied up again." Elias didn't answer right away. He stirred the fire. "Good," he said at last. The next morning, the bell on the gate rang once, lightly. Elias didn't move, neither did Eliza. They looked at each other, both knowing this moment had been walking toward them ever since the barn door first opened. Beyond the fence, dust rose slowly, too slowly for a traveler just passing through. Elias lifted the rifle. Eliza stood beside him, and as the sound of hooves drew closer, a thought weighed heavy in Elias's chest. When Wade Holloway set foot on this land again, was Eliza ready to face the man who thought that barn had been the final period in her life's story? The gate bell rang again just before sundown. Not loud, not rushed, just enough to let Elias Mercer know someone wanted him awake. He stood on the porch, the rifle resting against his leg, watching the dust curl up slow. Eliza Crow stood 1 step behind him, wearing a coat still too big for her, hands loose at her sides but steady. No one spoke. 3 riders came into view, 2 stayed back. 1 rode forward like he owned the place. Elias didn't need to hear the name. He already knew. Wade Holloway rode like a man who'd never been told no and had never learned how to listen. He was heavier than Eliza remembered, older too, but the smile was the same. It was the kind of smile that said the world was something to be taken, not shared. Elias stepped off the porch, planting his boots in the dirt. Not aggressive, not polite, just there. "Didn't think anyone was home," Wade drawled. Elias didn't answer right away. He took his time. "You're standing on my land," Elias said. Wade laughed, a short laugh, like he was indulging a child. "Land's a funny thing," Wade said. "Paper decides who owns it." Eliza's chest tightened. She remembered those words. He always talked like the world was a receipt, folded neatly in his pocket. Elias nodded once. "Paper's funny too," he said. "It burns." The 2 men behind Wade shifted in their saddles. One spat. The other glanced, just briefly, toward the barn. Eliza saw it, and she understood something important. They knew what had happened in there. Wade's eyes slid past Elias and settled on Eliza. His smile thinned. "Well, I'll be," he said. "You're tougher than you look." Eliza stepped forward before Elias could stop her. Her voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. "You left me there," she said. "You didn't even check." Wade shrugged. "No need." Something settled in Elias's chest. Not anger, but certainty. This man would never pretend to be anything else. Elias didn't raise his voice. Men like Wade didn't deserve speeches. One of Wade's men reached for his gun. Not fast, just careless. Elias fired first. The shot cracked across the land like dry wood splitting. The man went down and didn't move. Eliza raised the gun Elias had given her. Her hands didn't shake, though her stomach did. She pulled the trigger. The other man didn't fall clean. He screamed and dropped, clutching his leg, trying to crawl for cover. Wade dove off his horse, rolling toward the livestock barn, firing wildly. Bullets struck fence posts and dirt. One tore through the porch railing. Wood exploded like dry bone. Dust kicked up around Elias's boots. "Elias, move steady." Not rushing, not chasing. Eliza swung wide, just like Elias had taught her. She felt the fear, but it didn't control her. Wade tried to run. He always did. Eliza took him down near the barn door. The same door. They hit the ground hard. He grabbed at her coat, her hair, anything he could reach. "You think this changes anything?" he snarled. "It already has," she said. Elias was there seconds later. He grabbed Wade by the collar, hauled him up, and held him tight. Wade's eyes flicked toward the barn for the first time. He didn't look so sure anymore. "You left her there to disappear," Elias said. "That was your mistake." Wade started talking, begging, promising, blaming everyone but himself. Elias didn't hit him. He didn't shout. He just listened. That night, they didn't kill Wade Holloway. They did something worse. They stripped away the lie by showing it to the light. Wade was tied to a mule. A sign hung around his neck that told the truth. No drama, no poetry. The sign read, "I left a woman in a barn to die." The whole town saw him led through, slow enough for every porch, every window to take it in. No one laughed, no one looked away. In that land, justice didn't always wear a badge. When it was over, the ranch grew quiet again. But this time, it wasn't the kind of silence that crawled under your skin. Later, Eliza sat on the porch with a cup of tea Elias had burned, and she smiled anyway. "Guess we're even now," she said. Elias gave a small laugh. "Not yet." The days after passed on. The fence was mended again. The barn door stayed open. Eliza still had bad nights. Elias still rose early. Healing didn't arrive all at once. One evening, Eliza asked him a question that caught him off guard. "Do you think a place remembers what happened to it?" Elias thought about the barn, about the war, about all the things he'd tried to forget. "I think people do," he said. "And most of the time, that's enough." That weekend, Elias found a scrap of paper nailed to the gate. Old paper, red paint. "I'll be back to take what's mine." Eliza read it without blinking. "That's not Wade's handwriting," she said. Elias folded the paper and slipped it into his coat pocket. "It's from someone older," he said. The wind picked up. The land went quiet again. And that was when Elias realized the ranch wasn't done being tested. Before we go on, if you're still here listening, take a moment to sit with it. Maybe pour yourself a cup of tea or coffee. Let the story breathe a little slower. If stories like this matter to you, you can subscribe. No rush, just stay if you want to know how it ends. And tell me one thing. What time is it where you are right now? And where are you listening from? Because the next part of this story isn't about Wade Holloway anymore. It's about a past Elias Mercer thought he'd buried, and about the man who just knocked on the gate to dig it back up. The paper stayed in Elias Mercer's pocket for 2 days, not because he forgot it, but because he didn't want to say it out loud and make it real. Eliza Crow noticed anyway. She noticed everything now. The way Elias checked the gate twice. The way he listened to the hills before he listened to her. The way his coffee went cold because he kept staring past the fence. On the third morning, the letter appeared, not brought by a rider, not delivered with a warning, just there, caught on a fence post like it belonged to the place. A plain envelope, no name, no town mark, no courtesy. Elias held it for a long time before opening it. Eliza was in the kitchen baking bread, the smell almost enough to trick him, into feeling normal, almost. He opened the envelope with 2 fingers and read 4 words. I remember Tombstone. Elias's mouth went dry, not from fear, but from memory. He folded the letter slowly and slipped it into his coat pocket, right beside the other note. Then he stood in the yard like a man trying to hear something that wasn't the wind. Eliza stepped onto the porch, wiping her hands on a towel. Mail out here now? She asked, keeping her voice light. Elias didn't look up. Not the kind you want, he said. She stepped down 1 stair, eyes narrowing slightly. Whose are? At last, Elias looked at her. He could have lied. He didn't. An old mistake, he said. Eliza held his gaze. She didn't press, but she didn't let go either. That was different about her now. She wasn't loud. She was steady. That afternoon, Elias worked more than he needed to, fixed boards that didn't matter, moved tools that were already put away, anything to keep his hands busy. Eliza watched him for a while, then went back inside. She didn't follow him with questions. She knew what it felt like when your own thoughts wouldn't loosen their grip. When night fell, Elias didn't light the porch lamp. He didn't like being seen. Eliza noticed. Still, she brought 2 cups of tea outside and set one near his knee. You don't have to tell me, she said, but don't shut me out. Elias stared into the dark. The land looked calm, but he knew calm wasn't a promise. It was something you borrowed, and sooner or later, someone came to collect. I ran with people I shouldn't have, he said. His voice was low, like he didn't want the ranch to hear. Eliza sat still. No sharp breath, no judgment, just listening. That was before the war, Elias went on, before I had anything worth losing. He swallowed. Tombstone, he said. That place gets into your bones. Say it once and you taste dust for a week. Eliza nodded, as if she understood, even if she didn't fully. There was a man, Elias said. Raw. He didn't finish the name. He didn't need to. He led a crew. I rode with them for a while. We weren't saints. We weren't heroes, just men who thought the world owed us. Eliza's fingers tightened around her cup. Did you hurt anyone? She asked. Elias didn't answer right away. Then he spoke like a man stepping onto thin ice. I didn't pull the trigger that day, he said, but I didn't stop it either. Eliza let out a slow breath. Wind moved through the grass somewhere in the dark. A coyote howled, then went quiet. Raw found you, Eliza said. Elias nodded. And if he found me, then he found what matters to me. Eliza glanced, without meaning to, toward the barn, then back at Elias. So he's not coming for the land, she said. Elias shook his head once. He's coming for the story, he said, and men like him like to decide how it ends. Eliza set her cup down. Then we don't give him an ending, she said. Elias almost smiled at that. Almost. The next morning, Elias saddled the horse before the sun had fully cleared the hills. Eliza stepped onto the porch. Her hair was tied back neatly, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Where are you going? She asked. Checking the east fence, Elias said. Eliza looked at him with the kind of look that said she wasn't asking out of politeness, and she didn't believe him either. Don't be stupid, she said. Elias paused, one boot already in the stirrup. That's the nicest thing you've said to me all week, he replied. Eliza let out a small huff of a laugh, then turned serious again. Come back, she said. Elias nodded once, and rode off. He didn't go to the east fence. He took the trail up along the ridge, where the wind always changed first. Halfway up, he saw a small fire. Not a wildfire, not a camp set by accident, a controlled flame, the kind lit by someone who wanted to be found, but not cornered. Elias dismounted and slowed his steps. The rifle stayed low. His heart didn't. Then a voice came out of the dark, calm as someone asking for direction. "Still wearing those old boots, Mercer?" Elias stopped. He didn't turn fast. He didn't act surprised. Raw stepped into the firelight as if he'd been invited. Older, rougher. But the smile was the same, the kind Wade Holloway had worn. Like pain was funny as long as it happened to someone else. "Brave of you coming alone," Raw said. "Or maybe you're just tired of living?" Elias met his gaze. "I'm tired of you," he said. Raw chuckled and leaned closer to the fire. "I'm not here to shoot you today," he said. "I'm here to remind you, to see if you still flinch. And if you don't, I'll make sure you do." Elias's jaw tightened. "Remind me of what?" he asked. Raw's smile widened just a little. "Tombstone," he said. "What you let happen, what you turned your back on." Elias didn't move. The fire crackled. Raw glanced past him toward the ranch. "Nice little place," he said. "Quiet, clean, almost like you deserve it." Elias's hand tightened on the rifle stock, not enough to raise it, just enough to keep himself steady. Raw tilted his head. "And that girl," he added. "A fresh start, right?" That was when Elias understood the real threat. Raw wasn't hunting land. He was hunting leverage. Elias took a slow breath. "I'm not that man anymore," he said. Raw laughed out loud, like he'd just heard the best joke of the year. "That's real sweet," he said, "but I am." For a long moment, Elias could have ended it right there. One pull of the trigger, one shot, one less ghost in the world. But Elias didn't raise the gun. He didn't give Raw the ending he was looking for. Instead, Elias stepped back out of the firelight. "You want to play games? Find someone else who still wants to play," he said. "I'm going home." Raw's smile flickered for the first time, just a beat. "You turn your back now," Raw said, "and you think that makes you better?" Elias looked him straight in the eye, calm, like a man who'd finally learned what mattered. "It makes me free," he said. Then he turned and walked back to his horse. He waited for a gunshot, for a blade out of the dark. Nothing came, just Raw's voice, drifting after him like smoke as, "Shh, this isn't over, Mercer." Elias rode back hard, not out of fear, but because he knew Eliza would read his face the instant he arrived. When he reached the porch, Eliza was already there, like she'd listened to the wind, and the wind had told her the truth. He dismounted and looked at her. There was no room for lies now. "He's real," Elias said. "And he knows about you." Eliza's eyes didn't widen. They sharpened. "Then tell me one thing, Elias," she said, her voice low and steady. "What did you do in Tombstone that made someone like Raw come sniffing around my barn?" The ranch felt different after Elias told the truth. Not heavier, sharper. Eliza didn't make him explain Tombstone right away. She didn't need the details yet. She could hear it in his voice, the way you hear a crack in old wood. That night, neither of them really slept. Elias sat on the porch, the lamp turned low. Eliza stayed inside at the table, cleaning the gun slowly, carefully. They weren't hiding. They were preparing. Morning came clear and bright, the kind of morning that tricked people into thinking trouble knew how to rest. Elias poured coffee and slid a cup toward Eliza. "You don't have to stay," he said. "You could go into town, catch a train east." Eliza looked at him like he'd just asked her to forget her own name. "I already ran once," she said. "I'm done with that." Elias nodded. He'd hoped she'd say it, and he'd been afraid she would. They spent the day doing ordinary things on purpose, fixing a fence post, patching a hinge, feeding the horse twice, because ordinary work kept hands from shaking. Near midday, Elias finally talked about Tombstone. Not all of it, just enough. "It was a robbery gone wrong," he said. "Fire broke out. Guns went off. A child was hit. A woman burned. It wasn't the kind of fire that stayed in one place. It ran down the street like it had a grudge." Eliza stood very still. "I didn't pull the trigger," Elias said again, "but I watched. And that's the part that never lets me sleep," he said. Eliza drew in a slow breath. "I know that feeling," she said, still not moving. That was all. It was enough. By late afternoon, Elias noticed the horse acting strange again, ears twitching, nostrils flaring. Then he saw dust. This time, just one rider, not Wade, not Raw, a stranger. The man stopped at the gate and tipped his hat, like he had manners. "Evening," he said. Elias stepped forward, the rifle resting easy in his hands. "Depends," he replied. The man glanced past him toward the house, toward Eliza, then back again. "I'm just carrying a message," he said. "Some folks are asking about this place." Elias's eyes narrowed. "What kind of folks?" The man shrugged. "The kind that don't like loose ends." He turned his horse and rode off without another word. Eliza let out the breath she'd been holding. "So it started," she said. "It started a while ago," Elias replied. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but from thought. She stepped out onto the porch where Elias sat sharpening his knife. "Do you ever think about leaving again?" she asked. Elias didn't look up. Every man does, and every man has to decide when leaving costs more than staying. Eliza sat down beside him. "Then we stay," she said. Elias finally looked at her and nodded. The next morning brought trouble with a different face. The town sheriff rode in just after breakfast, hat brim pulled low, eyes tired. "I've heard about Wade," he said. Elias didn't deny it. "Some folks think you went too far," the sheriff added. Eliza stepped forward before Elias could speak. "Some folks are wrong," she said. The sheriff studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "Off the record," he said, "when a man like Raw starts asking questions, this won't end cleanly." Elias nodded. "I'm counting on that." The sheriff tipped his hat and rode off without writing a thing down. That evening, Elias set the lanterns just right. Not too bright, not hidden either. Eliza noticed something else. A crow kept landing on the same fence post, like it was waiting for someone. Then it took off, fast, as if it had just received a signal. Eliza helped him, calm and focused. The girl who had once been tied up in a barn felt like someone from another life. They sat side by side as the sun went down. The land stretched out around them, wide and silent. "Are you scared?" Elias asked. Eliza thought for a moment. "Not like before," she said. "Before, I didn't know if anyone would come. Now I know who's standing with me." Elias smiled at that, a real smile. When darkness settled in, a sound crossed the yard. Boots, slow and deliberate. Elias stood. Eliza stood with him at the edge of the light. A voice carried out, calm and familiar. "Evening, Mercer." Raw stepped forward alone, hands visible, an easy smile on his face. He looked solitary, but the darkness behind him felt crowded. "No guns tonight," he said. "Just talking." Elias didn't raise his rifle, neither did Eliza. "You always liked conversations that ended your way," Elias said. Raw chuckled. "I like endings." Eliza felt it then, clear as daylight. This wasn't about the past anymore. It was about choice. Raw glanced at her. "Guess you're the reason he found his spine," he said. Eliza met his eyes. "No," she said, "I'm the reason he remembers who he is." Raw's smile faltered, just slightly. He took a step back into the dark. "Sleep well?" he said. "Tomorrow should be interesting." Then he was gone. The ranch went quiet again. Too quiet. Elias let out a slow breath. "They're testing us," he said. Eliza nodded, her heart steady. "Then tomorrow, we stop letting them." She looked at the barn, the house, the land that had seen too much, and the same thought settled over both of them as the night deepened. When the sun came up, would Raw make Elias bleed for Tombstone? Or would Elias do the one thing that frightened a predator more than a gun? Morning came without asking. No warning, no mercy. The ranch woke beneath a pale sky, the kind of sky that forces people to be honest, whether they want to be or not. Elias Mercer stood on the porch before the sun cleared the hills, coffee untouched, eyes fixed on the land that had demanded more from him than he had ever planned to give. Eliza Crow stepped out to stand beside him a moment later. She didn't say good morning. She didn't need to say hello. Some mornings carried too much weight for small courtesies. They both knew Raw hadn't come to talk. He'd come to measure, to see whether Elias was still the man who once stood still in Tombstone, and whether Eliza was still the woman who could be left in a barn and forgotten. On both counts, he was wrong. Elias turned to her. "I'm not ending this with a gun," he said. Eliza didn't look surprised. She nodded once. "I figured you'd talked long enough to learn one important thing," she said. "Violence closes doors. Choice opens them." Even so, Elias saddled the horse, not to run, but to ride straight toward the thing he'd avoided for decades. Eliza stood at the gate watching him go. "You have to come back," she said. Elias looked at her and smiled. The smile of a man who finally believed he might deserve what he had. "I will." He rode up toward the ridgeline, where the land leveled out and the wind always shifted first. Raw was already there, leaning against a rock, unarmed, confidence echoing even in his silence. "Took you long enough," Raw said. Elias dismounted and faced him. No raised gun, no drawn knife, just a man standing where he chose to stand. "I came for an ending," Elias said. Raw smiled. "I came for the truth." Elias nodded slowly. Then, listen. He told him about the war, about Maggie, about nights waking to the smell of smoke and guilt still lingering on his tongue, about the day in Tombstone when he did nothing, and how that nothing had followed him like a shadow ever since. Raw listened, his smile fading bit by bit. "I'm done running," Elias said. "I'm done pretending, and I'm done giving you the power you think you still have." Raw stepped closer. "You think saying it out loud fixes everything?" "No," Elias said, "but choosing who you are from here on does." The wind moved between them, quiet and waiting. For a long moment, it was as if the desert itself leaned in to listen. Raw glanced past Elias toward the distant ranch, toward the porch where Eliza stood, small but unmovable. "You've got something to lose now," Raw said. Elias nodded. "That's the point." Raw held his gaze, searching for the man who had flinched years ago. He didn't find him. At last, Raw exhaled and stepped back. "Walking away doesn't erase the past," he said. "No," Elias replied, "but it keeps the past from owning tomorrow." Raw turned and walked off without another word. No gunfire, no chase, just dust, distance, and a choice fully made. Elias rode back as the sun climbed higher. Eliza was still at the gate. She didn't ask what happened. She saw it in his shoulders, in the rhythm of his breathing. "It's over," he said. Eliza smiled. Not big, not loud. Real. Life didn't become perfect after that. There were mornings that still felt heavy for no clear reason. Nights spent staring at the ceiling, replaying old choices. That wasn't failure, that was being human. Healing is slow and it's rarely pretty. Eliza still had nights when memories of the barn returned in pieces. Elias still woke early, checking fences that didn't need checking, but something had shifted. The ranch was no longer a place to hide. It became a place to live. They planted a small garden, not because they had to, but because it meant staying. Eliza learned to read the land. Elias learned to listen again. One evening, they sat on the porch as the sky turned a soft gold. Eliza broke the silence. "Do you ever think you're too old to start over?" Elias smiled into his cup. "Starting over just means we're living with more scars," he said, "and I've still got room for a few more." Eliza laughed, a real laugh this time. The sound healed the land more than any rain ever had. If you're still listening to this story, maybe something in it feels familiar. Maybe you've carried guilt too long. Maybe you stayed quiet when you should have stood up. Maybe you told yourself it was too late to choose differently. Elias Mercer didn't fix the past. He faced it. Eliza Crow didn't erase what happened to her. She refused to let it define her. And sometimes, that's the only kind of justice that lasts. Let me ask you a simple question.